Check it out, everybody. Welcome back. We're here, Dunk Dynasty, a college sports podcast. This week, we're breaking down 3 CFB teams looking to contend for a national title. We'll kick it off with NC State. We actually got a host for NC State that's going to come on. He's going to spew his propaganda. And then we're going to talk about Kansas. My favorite out of the Big 12 is going to be Kansas football. We'll talk about that more. And then we will also talk about Arizona football as well. As most of you know, I'm from Arizona, born and raised, so big fan of Arizona sports. So I'll speak some propaganda there as well. So I know I just mentioned it, but I'm super excited. I'm going to bring on Caleb. He's with Gridiron Goons. He's also the host of Open Bets, the show. Caleb, how you doing?
What's going on, my man? How you doing?
Doing good, doing good. So we'll get right into it. Man's got the NC State hat on. He's got the NC State jersey on.
Of course, gotta rep
Um,
the
so
future 2024 national champions.
I knew he was going to spew the propaganda.
That's
Well,
that's only a little bit of a joke, I promise.
well, we'll get started. We'll kick it off. Wolfpack come in preseason number 24, so they just sneak in the top 25. I'm curious. I'll let you chime in. I got mine broken down into the first 4 games, the second 4 games, and then the last 4 games. So if you want to let me know what are your thoughts for the first 4 games, and then I'll share my thoughts.
Well, I think the first 4 games will tell us how correct those rankings are. I personally see it right around there. In my own rankings, I have them right around 2021, but obviously I am biased. I am a Wolfpack grad. I am a Wolfpack fan, right? So I do have a little bit of bias towards them. Obviously, Western Carolina starting out. That's your FCS school. Shouldn't be any problems there. Should be they're 33-point favorites, right? They should win that game by 35. It's going to be Tennessee Clemson. That's a tough 2 teams to face in your first 4 games. I think if they split the 2, then they're in pretty good shape. If they win both, then we're really talking about seeing them compete for a top 12 spot for sure. And obviously, if they lose both, then we're going to see another 8-9 win season and see us in the dang Duke's Mayo Bowl again. So it really depends on. I mean, Tennessee Clemson's going to tell us how good the Wolfpack are going to be this year.
Yeah, no, you and I are on very similar wavelengths. 2 ranked opponents to start the season in the first 4 games. Obviously, you got Tennessee. Luckily, you have that game at home, playing at Neyland. That's a different beast.
It's actually a neutral site. It'll be in Bank of America in Charlotte.
Okay. So it's neutral site. Is it really neutral site though if you're playing in Charlotte? No, not really. But
No,
anyway.
it's about 30 minutes less of a drive for us than Tennessee fans. So it is in our state, so we have an advantage there.
And then you got Clemson. I think that like you said, these 2 games in the first 4 weeks of the season, you got number 14, and then I think Clemson came in at 13 in the new AP Top 25, or it might be 14 and 15, something like that. But those like right in the middle of the pack. So there's obviously, like you said, there's 2 completely different things, right? They start off incredibly hot. You go 4-0 in your first 4 games. You're probably top 10, top 8 maybe if you start out 24. You beat Clemson, you beat Tennessee. I think you're definitely in the top 10. Looking at winning the ACC at that point. If you beat Clemson, you're looking at winning the ACC and getting that top 4 seed, that guaranteed spot in the top 4 with the bye and all that stuff. You go 1-1, which I think is obviously the more realistic situation. I don't know about you as a fan, but if I was a fan, I would want to lose to Tennessee and beat Clemson. Just that whole ACC
Absolutely. Oh, of course. Absolutely.
tiebreakers, all that kind of stuff. And then obviously you go 0-2 in those two games, and you're looking real bleak. You're way out of the top 25. Very unlikely that you're going to have a chance at the 12 team CFP. Um, so yeah, I think we're on the same page. I think best case scenario, you split the two games, beating Clemson. That way you have that leg up in the ACC. Um, and then I'll dive right into the next four games. That you got Wake, Syracuse, Cal, and Stanford. So right there, you hit the heart of the ACC schedule. I don't think any of these schools are going to be phenomenal at football this year. They'll be decent. They'll put a team on the field. To make it into the CFP the first year of this 12 teams, in my opinion, I think the committee is going to focus a lot on style points. So you need to win the games that you're supposed to win by a lot, and then you need to sneak out a game or two that you should. So that's what we're talking about, like that Tennessee or that Clemson game or both, right?
Right.
Um,
100%.
the only game that the Wolfpack shouldn't win are the two that we already discussed. So I think if the Wolfpack are 8-1, 9-0 after those first 9 games, they're probably locking themselves a spot in the top 12, because their last 3 games are not anything to bat an eye at. But I'm curious. What are your thoughts with that middle of the pack there for those 4 games, four
Yeah,
matches?
it's going to be really interesting just because the NC State teams that we've seen the past 3 years have been really, really good on defense, very, very mediocre on offense. I don't think that's going to be the case this year. I think we got Grayson McCall coming in from Coastal Carolina, who's a solid quarterback, one of the best FCS, not FCS, but G5 quarterbacks that was in the transfer portal. You actually got one of the best tight end prospects in Justin Jolly from UConn. You got a great running back coming in Jordan Waters. And then you have a really experienced offensive line. So I think it's actually going to flip where that offense is going to be a little bit better. And losing Peyton Wilson on defense, you also have Tony Gibson as the defensive coordinator. Aiden White is a phenomenal corner. But that defense isn't quite the same defense that we're used to seeing. So I really wonder how some of these teams, like coming from the Pac 12, I really think this Cal game might be interesting just because I've seen Cal put up a lot of points in the past. And I really wonder how we're going to compete with a true, just gunslinging team. Now, I'm not saying that Cal is just absolute 100% gunslinger is going to put up 60 points a game, but it is a little bit different style than we're kind of used to seeing. Um, I think that Cal in that group is the only one that gives me trouble just because you're going across the country too. So you
Mm-hmm.
play Northern Illinois, you're going to beat them. Wake Forest, we should handle at home just fine. Syracuse at home, shouldn't have issues there. Stanford, I mean, solid, above mediocre, but not good. It's Cal that is a solid team. They might be able to put up a little bit of points and going across the country to California. Haven't done that in forever, right? Especially regular season, never happens. So that's going to be a really interesting one to see how that team travels across the country, plays against a team with completely different style than we're really used to seeing.
Yeah, no, I think that's one thing that I know you and I were talking about it, before we jumped on the show, but there's like 1 or 2 games on NC State's schedule that they 100% should win, right? But it's like, is that a trap game? Like maybe. Is Cal going to put up 60 points? Probably not, but like they could, and I don't think anyone would be surprised if they did. I would definitely agree with you. I think Cal is one of those weird teams that they can put up 60 points one game, and then you turn around the next week and they're losing to a North Dakota State by 15.
Right,
Like
right.
like so I think that you hit the nail right on the head with that situation there. It's like what do you hope for in terms of you know what I guess, like, what Cal team do you see? Obviously, and I think that's the biggest thing that we've all talked about all year coming into this season when the Pac-12 disbanded. Like, okay, Oregon, USC, Washington, all that stuff, they all went to the Big Ten, right? And it's like the Big Ten travel is not much better than the ACC travel. You're gonna have Oregon going over to face Michigan. You're gonna have Oregon going over to face Ohio State. Like none of those games are gonna be a walk in the park. But I think that I think that's what you focus on is like is the travel going to get to these guys early in the season? I
Yeah, I
I,
mean, I
I
don't
think it I
think
think it will.
I don't I it really depends on the team and the makeup because I think that these guys, I mean, they're so college football has grown to the point where they're so well prepared, they're so dialed into football. These guys do travel and they obviously are getting to these games on Thursdays or Friday. Yeah, Thursdays for these Saturday games as college students. So I mean, they have multiple days to adjust for the jet lag. It's definitely different, but I don't think that the travel for the most part is gonna be huge. But especially with these teams where we're seeing West Coast teams play East Coast teams, that's really where I think we're going to see the travel mess you up. I think the ones that have a little bit of a stretch, right? That 2 hour time difference, 1 hour time difference might not be a big deal. But when you're going literally coast to coast, Penn State, Oregon, Penn State, Washington,
Hmm.
NC State, Cal, right? Florida State, Stanford is literally the uh,
UCF, Arizona State. I know it's not an ACC game, but UCF, Arizona State is mind blowing to me. I don't
yeah, it
I
just
don't
doesn't
understand it.
sound right. It doesn't sound right at all. But I mean, it's going to be really interesting to see how these different teams handle that adversity for sure. The home field advantage is definitely going to come into play. Obviously, the Wolfpack. The only thing that I'm noticing big time about this schedule is NC State's had a very, very good home field advantage. I think we've lost to Notre Dame and Boston College of all in like since I was a freshman, so 2019. I think we've lost all of three home games.
Hmm.
So that home field advantage is massive, especially when you're getting Stanford flying in. Um, but just other teams that have this big home field advantages that are now going to have teams flying in from across country to play them. I think
Yeah,
it's really going to just heighten what that home field advantage means. That's one thing that I kind of hate about this schedule is that all the tough games are away or neutral site.
yeah, yeah. I would definitely agree. I think that home field advantage is going to be a huge thing, as it is every year, right? All the really good teams, what do they bank on? They bank on that home field advantage. But we'll wrap it up with NC State. With we got the last three games of the season. You got Georgia Tech, Duke, and UNC. Top to bottom, I think the ACC is going to be very decent outside of Florida State, Clemson, and North Carolina State, in my opinion. With that being said, you have these two like rivalry-esque games in Duke and UNC to end the season. And then before you have those two games, you have Georgia Tech. I personally think that NC State, if they slip up, it's going to be against Georgia Tech.
I
Of
100% agree with you.
those three games, I'm curious to know your thoughts though.
We'll see. We have Georgia Tech sandwiched in, so we take Duke at home. Where this year, I don't think Duke's gonna. I mean, we dropped a game to Duke. That's why we didn't have a 10-win season. It's because we dropped a game we shouldn't to Duke's third string quarterback because we had MJ Morris play and we put up 3 points against Duke. Um, I mean, those are the games that NC State is prone to. We almost always drop one that you probably shouldn't. Team plays well, things aren't going your way, and you drop one. Obviously, that's how sports work. But if there
Hmm.
was any game on this schedule outside, I mean, the Cal game is going to be interesting, but Georgia Tech is the one that I'm already picturing it in my nightmares of NC State being 9-1, 10-1, going into Georgia Tech, right? And Georgia Tech looking pretty decent with Haynes King, and us slipping up, losing to Georgia Tech, losing our shot at making the playoffs because we're worried about our rival North Carolina coming up the next week, and we kind of take Georgia Tech lightly. I'm already scared of that one happening.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely right on the same page with you. I wrapped up my little propaganda spiel. I think that for NC State to be in the conversation for the college football playoffs, they need to run the table and have either one loss to Tennessee or Clemson. I'm not expecting them to win both, but you need to win one of those games and you need to run the table. Otherwise, in my opinion, I don't think that you make the top 12 because if you don't beat Clemson, you're probably not winning the ACC, and then you have to bank on being seeds 5 through 12. I
Right.
don't think that the strength of schedule for you guys is tough enough to be a 10-2 team and make the CFP.
I think the
Um,
only caveat to that is let's say for example, if NC State were to win all the games they're supposed to win and lose to Tennessee Clemson, they still could be, just because of the way that some of these schedules work out, there is a shot where they're the number 2 team in that ACC championship. They then have to beat probably Florida State for the ACC championship. That's the only way that I see them getting in with 2 losses. But I agree with you. I think that really you can afford one slip up. Essentially, you can lose one, you can drop one game. If you drop 2 games, you have to have some help, and then you have to win the ACC championship if you want to make
exactly.
the playoffs.
I have them. So my prediction is 9-3, and they go 6-2 in the ACC with a loss to Clemson, and then like we said, that trap game loss to Georgia Tech.
See, I don't think that's a bad take. I personally think that Clemson is a team that I think we have a better shot at beating Clemson. I know it's in Death Valley, but I like us against Clemson. Cade Klubnik really struggled against us last year. And Clemson's a team that, especially with this transfer portal changing and Dabo being a little bit reluctant, I think they still have that little bit of being overrated just because how good they were in the past.
That's
I
that's
like
what
our chance
happened
against
last
Clemson
year.
better.
Yeah, I mean that's what happened last year. They were ranked preseason, and then they lost like what, two of the first four games or something like that, and then they lost to Duke, and I don't know, man. I know Dabo Sweeney he loves Clemson football, but I think he's hampering that school by not using the transfer portal, by not using NIL. Like you can't tell me that there is not car dealerships and restaurants and shit banging on his office door trying to give kids NIL money to come to school at Clemson.
Oh,
You can't.
100%. Yeah, it does blow my mind, especially when Clemson, because of the name recognition, will get that despite Clemson as a city not being all that big. NC State's dealing with the fact that the problem isn't their football being prominent, right? The problem is that all the money in the area, in this triangle area, everybody cares about UNC and Duke basketball,
Yep.
right? So if you want like these big businesses and whatnot that want to do sponsorship deals, they want to go to UNC basketball. They want to go to Duke basketball. They don't want to come to NC State basketball because outside of last year, they're the most mediocre team I've ever heard of in my life. But NC State football, I mean, there's 20 other teams that finish in the 17 to 40 best football teams
Yep.
every year, right? So I mean, it's not all that exciting. Now, I do think that if they really start to do well, right, and they compete for a spot in the playoff, it might start to change. You might start to get a little bit more recognition, a little bit more of that NIL coming into NC State. But
I think it's gonna take more than one season, just because of the brand, like you were talking about the brand notoriety with Duke and UNC. Like UNC's been prominent since Michael Jordan was there, fucking five ever ago. So I think it's gonna take more than one Final Four run and more than one CFP run. But I definitely agree with you there, Caleb. I appreciate you coming on, spewing the propaganda, and I appreciate it. Have a great day, boss.
yes, sir. Hannah, you have a good one.
Appreciate it, Caleb, for jumping on. We'll jump in. We got two more teams that we're going to talk about. We're going to first talk about Arizona, ranked number 21 coming into the preseason. I think that the Wildcats have a lot to be excited for. The things that they shouldn't be excited for, obviously, they lost Jed Fish to Washington, but they're moving to the Big 12. You get to keep Fafita and McMillan off of a phenomenal end to the last season. McMillan was vying for a Heisman. At least people thought he should have been vying for a Heisman last season. And you keep both of them because of the NIL. The NIL supporters down in Tucson said, we'll give you whatever you want. All you have to do is stay another year. So we keep Fafita and Teoscar McMillan, and you have 3 ranked games to start the season, and you're in the top 25 AP poll. When's the last time we saw a respectful football squad? It's been a year, been a minute. So coming into this season, the struggle for the Wildcats is going to be keeping up the momentum away from home. They play at Utah and at K-State to start the season after playing 2 cupcakes at home in Northern Arizona and New Mexico. Last season, their road games were either tough losses or very, very ugly wins. USC, they lost by 2. Stanford, they won by 1. And I'm pretty sure that was on like a 7-point Hail Mary. They shouldn't have won. And Colorado, you win by 3. Coming into that season, if the Arizona squad wants to find themselves in the college football playoff, they're going to need some style points. Not only do you need to win at home, you need to win on the road and do it convincingly. Arizona needs to beat Utah. My opinion, I don't think Cam Rising, I think he's overrated. I think they'll beat Utah. But with that being said, you need to beat Utah. You need to go to Manhattan and beat Kansas State. If you start off 4-0, you're in the top 10. You got Texas Tech at home. Then you got BYU on the road. Those 2 are both very, very winnable games. And then, of course, you have Colorado, West Virginia, and UCF. UCF is one of those games that I'm interested to see. I know I talked about it with Caleb, talking about the travel with the ACC. Flying from Tucson to Orlando, it's like a 6-hour flight. Is this school going to be ready to compete with a national championship winning UCF squad? Yes, I said it. Hate on me all you want. Is this school going to be able to go into Orlando and win a game? I think that game is going to be one of those potential slip-up games because you have Houston and TCU. After that, Houston, they're going to be at the bottom of the Big 12. Don't have to worry about them. And then you have TCU at TCU, Fort Worth, Texas, another very, very tough place to play before you finish the season with Arizona State at home. I think that in order for Arizona to be in the CFP contention, you need, like I said, you need to win the games and do it convincingly. My question and my worry with the Wildcats this season are they going to have enough weapons outside of Fafita and McMillan to confuse people? Colorado went into last season. All they had was Shadur Sanders and Travis Hunter. It's very easy to win a football game when you only have to prepare for 2 people. If Arizona is only preparing to play with Fafita and McMillan, you're going to be in a tough, tough situation this season. In all seriousness, I think Arizona has a chance to be great if Brent Brennan can pick up where Jed Fish left off last season. I will say that's a big if because there's some unknowns coming into the season. My prediction is they are 10-2 and they are tied for second place with Utah in the Big 12. And now we'll talk about who I think is going to win the Big 12. A lot of people are going to hate this take, but the Kansas Jayhawks, rock chalk, they're going to win the Big 12 this season. Wrapping up, we're going to take a deep dive into, like I said, my favorite to win the Big 12. Their hopes are just as high, if not higher, than Arizona. Kansas has Devin Neal and Jalen Daniels this season, both of which who led the team to recent historic heights before Daniels got injured. I know a lot of people last season, including myself, continued to say, when will they lose? When will they lose? The team just continued to win. They won people a lot of money. The believers, the truthers, they won them a lot of money. The people who were like myself and said, when are they going to lose? Lost a lot of money. You start the season with 7 very, very winnable games for Kansas before you play your first preseason ranked opponent in Kansas State, which also happens to be your only ranked opponent, and it is your rivalry game. In Manhattan, you're going on the road to play a rivalry game. I don't care what sport it is, rivalry game, the sunflower game. Like, I know they call it the sunflower game in basketball. I don't know if it's the same in football, but the sunflower game is going to be their biggest challenge. I think we see a lot of the same in regard to NC State and Kansas in terms of schedule production. They're not going to get the style points in winning a lot of games that you shouldn't win because they only have one game that they quote unquote shouldn't win. And it's going to be Kansas State because they're ranked higher than them currently. And it's a rivalry game. So I think the spread will be a lot shorter than it would on a normal week. I do see a very likelihood of their only loss in the Big 12 being either Kansas State or Baylor. And the only reason I say Baylor is because it's their last game of the season before they have to play either Utah or Arizona in the Big 12 title game. If they are looking forward to the Big 12 title game, I think that Baylor is a sneaky squad that can get a win against this Kansas team. All in all, I'm very excited for this team. I love what Devin Neal is going to do to the Big 12. The Big 12 tends to favor the run game over the pass game due to the strong back end defenses. I think that this Kansas squad is going to go 11-1 with their one loss, like I said, coming to either Kansas State or Baylor. If they lose to both of those teams, kiss the CFP goodbye, kiss the top 25 goodbye. You're going to be in the Duke's Mayo Bowl or the Alamo Bowl or the Arizona Tecmo Bowl. This squad does not have the strength of schedule to have 2 losses and still make it into the college football playoffs. So with that, like I said, I'm very high on them, but also very nervous. I think Kansas is going to surprise a lot of people. A lot of people have them at like 9-3, 8-4. I think they're going to be a lot better than that. So we will see. Maybe I'm just a Kansas truther. I've been caught in the past being a Kansas truther. So with all that being said, I appreciate everyone for tuning in. I will have more of these episodes next week. We'll talk about 3 or 4 more teams, and then we'll start diving into games and schedules and how we think each of those weeks is going to break down. With that, I appreciate it, and I hope everyone has a great week. Until next time.